Hello, everyone. I am Steve Wolfson, evolutionary astrologer, and I had some couple of comments on YouTube after my last talk about, it was kind of nice, but it wasn't really an astrology talk. So I want to start uh, so that anybody who's watching this can hear in the first 15 seconds that nowadays I don't talk specifically and much about astrological details. I am doing what I call applied astrology, which is basically, okay, we have learned all this stuff about ourselves and life and the universe from astrology, and we have all this knowledge, information, and wisdom, and my life is still messy. And so what what do I do? I have all this stuff. How do I apply it to my own life? So, in a lot of ways, what I've been talking about is somewhat a journal of my own journey in healing and healing in what I would call a very grounded way, not a sort of new age kind of way. But more and more what I'm coming to is healing truly means becoming okay with myself as I am, and even learning to become okay with things I'm not really okay with, starting in myself. And of course, the way that I feel about myself, I project outward onto everything that I experience. And so the way I view the world is very influenced by the way I view myself. Now, it's pretty obvious to me, and from what I gather, most people at this particular point in time, that it's pretty darn intense right now. That's just the way it is. It's pretty darn intense. It's not an accident. I don't feel it's an accident, bad karma, whatever. I feel, in fact, the energies of transformation and change have and are very much rapidly stepping up. And that is actually what's behind all of the craziness and intensity that we're feeling. You can kind of look at it like when it's been kind of dark and this bright light goes on, one of the first things you see is all the places that have cracks and issues, because the light is shining on what has been in the dark. And I feel like this applies externally and internally. And in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about it because I'm myself am having was having a very intense day today. And I'm like, how can I talk? I'm having this intense day. And basically my inner guidance was saying to me, share it, to be vulnerable in ways beyond what I've done before. I felt for a while I was kind of crazy earlier, which is not something that I feel very often. The stuff is coming up in me, the lifelong stuff, the stuff I don't like, I don't want to feel, I don't want to acknowledge. And one of the strategies for that kind of stuff is to push it externally, make it about them or her or this. And it's not that everything in the world would be perfect except for the way that I'm perceiving it, because there's a whole lot of people that are not having a great day. and they're perceiving life through that lens. And the sum total of this collectively is the intensity, or contributes to the intensity. I mean, reality is, it's almost too obvious to point out, but reality as we have known it is not here anymore. I don't hear the question so much anymore as last year, when is everything getting back to normal? Because, my response is normal is over. In other words, we're heading into an unknown in very large ways. And it's scary at times because we don't know what's going on. And the light is shining on a whole lot of ugliness that is bubbling up, is what I was talking about. In my case, I have coming up, let me put it this way. So as a child, I was labeled as the angry, because I was supposedly angry about all kinds of things. And so I got labeled as this. So who wants to be labeled as that? Man, it was angry. I didn't understand why, and people around me didn't understand why. So this anger was labeled as a bad thing. When you have bad things, you don't want to be a bad person. You don't want to do bad things. You want to be liked and accepted. I did. And so what do? Try to push away, detach from, dissociate from the very parts that are causing people to look at one in an unpleasant way. When I look around, I've spent, I don't know, 50 years, maybe 40, 50 years, maybe more. What EA calls deconditioning myself. I mean, who knew they were conditioned in the first place? You're born, you're in a situation, all this stuff is going on. Everybody's circumstance is different, but almost everybody was raised by conditioned people. And they liked you when you behaved according to what the conditioning said was good, and they didn't like you when you didn't. And so we have learned to go along, to people please, to adapt. Some people don't want to do that, and they're very, very angry as a result. Some people just go along and keep smiling. Some people are in the middle, angry on the inside and trying to smile on the outside, and never being able to own or hold that anger because of the judgments that our culture, our world, our families, our spiritual paths put on these so-called negative emotions. What's happening for me is this lifelong stuff at times is just bubbling out. And I frankly don't know how to handle it at times. I mean, I'm not going around punching people and, being violent physically, but a lot of emotion is coming up, and I am slowly realizing this is an inherent, unavoidable, and highly necessary part of our healing journey. And it's why, I don't usually make up these titles. Where's my paper here? I don't usually make up these titles. Stuff comes to me, and I know when I hear it, when it appears, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. So it came to me a few weeks ago, getting real with what we feel. A little bit catchy, I think, but the point isn't that it's a catchy title, it's what does it mean? And what it means is, to a large extent, we're not allowed societally to be real with what we feel. particularly in our culture, we need to be happy and optimistic and joyful and grateful all the time. And that's what, when you're really spiritual, that's where you learn to live, and all this other shit, fades away. All these so-called negative feelings. And we have a lot of people in our culture that go with this. I have some kind of natural ability to, I don't know where it came from, but to look at photos and see to quite an extent what's actually going on inside the person in the picture. And, I see a zillion photos. I mean, the first thing that happens when somebody's taking a picture is most of the people in there put on a smile, whether they feel happy or not. And, so often I look at the pictures of people with a smile on their face, and I see what I also see, not that they're totally unhappy, but I also see what else is going on inside them. And there's a lot of places where they're not happy, and validly so, because there's uncomfortable, heavy stuff going on in their lives, or at the very least, they're under various pressures of things we need to do that may not be what we would have chosen to do if we had been given the opportunity to decide what we're going to do. And all this is okay. So in a way, what I'm standing up for here, speaking about, is what about all those feelings that don't fit the mold, that you don't see on TV, that aren't exciting, that are, I mean, we have, I'll talk about depression for one thing, and I'm going to use a very broad spectrum when I'm talking about depression, because to me, it's not what we tend to think about are kind of extreme cases when it's built to a head, but there's just depression in a way is not, I feel, is like not liking, feeling good with, or at one with what's going on in me, in my life, whatever. So what I come to, what if depression is a natural emotion, because some of what we're doing or trying to do or directions we're going in are not really the ones that we're intended to be going in, or that we have outlived their usefulness, their purpose in our lives. To me, more and more, I see that from the moment we're born, the deepest reason why any and all of us are here, EA, is the evolution of our soul. That's why we're born. That's why we're here. This doesn't mean we need to be miserable, unhappy, austere, but it does mean there's something, this is my perspective, I'll label it with that. It does mean that whatever is going on is not an accident or a mistake. And so you can be born into some really, really difficult circumstances. And one of my big things for the last number of years when talking about this stuff is our spiritual paths have essentially told us that when unpleasant things are occurring in our life, this tends to have something to do with karma, which means that I was a crappy person supposedly a crappy person in some past lives where I did unconscious, hurtful things to other people, and now I have to pay the price. It's kind of like, I held up a convenience store, and so I have to go to jail for 5 years. This is what I call the reward and punishment system, which is a view that most of our religions and philosophies have taught us is the way it works. And I more and more see life is not a reward and punishment system, because everything in life is really, truly trying to help us, including things that are extremely painful, that we experience as extremely painful. It is very difficult sometimes to truly see and understand how something is helping us, some really intense things. And I don't feel we can always know that, because the place it's helping us most deeply is on the level of our soul. And we don't have aware, 98% of us really don't know what's going on in our souls. I can think I do, and I can get occasional glimpses and so forth. But in terms of the big picture, most of us are not operating from that level of awareness. And I feel in a lot of ways that a lot of the difficult things that occur are actually trying to break us out of our conditioning. I'm not a big TV person, or not for a long, long time, I'm not. But I have this pet commercial that I used to really like, which was the Verizon commercial. When the guy is standing in the room with the Verizon guy is standing in the room with his phone going, "Do you hear me now? Do you hear me now?" And I think the point of it was that you can hear Verizon calls in rooms and places where other carriers were unable to do that. But I love the line, "Do you hear me now? Do you hear me now?" Because I think in a lot of ways, that's actually what's going on. And because of our conditioning, many or most of us, I feel, tend to feel almost a shaming that goes along with that. "Do you hear me now, idiot? Do you hear me?" No, they don't say idiot, but "Do you hear me now? Do you get it now?" No, I don't think it's like that. I mean, there's plenty of parts of me that still see it that way, and that unconsciously treat other people that way. But I think life, more and more I see life is unbelievably compassionate, in a way like a kind and caring but strong parent might be, compassionate heart. And there are things that we have to go through that are not going to, they're going to be experienced as unpleasant or not fun, but they're also good for us. And like a good parent doesn't spoil their kids, they love their kids, and they teach the kids that there are things we have to do that we're not going to like sometimes. And in the long run, they will be good for us. They will build character. And in the short run, they're not going to be fun. And I would rather do anything but the above. And it's kind of built in. And our childlike selves, you can call it our ego, our personality, and all this, that has the limited perspective of I'm here, I'm born, I'm living, I want to go after pleasure, avoid pain, and get ahead, and all this stuff that we're taught. From that perspective, a lot of the soul experiences don't really feel that great at times. And so we want more and more of the fun things, the dopamine rising things, and we want less and less of the painful things. I mean, for the majority of humanity, I would say at this point, that's the norm. I can't blame anyone for feeling that way. I certainly have had. From the perspective we look at things from, that makes total sense. The problem is we find out it's not really the way life works. You can have those experiences some of the time. You cannot have those experiences all of the time. It's not possible. It's not even supposed to be that way. And it doesn't mean that you're a lousy manifester or that you have bad karma. It's that we learn. We're here to learn. We're here to experience. And we learn some things from feeling great about ourselves and having wonderful experiences and opportunities. And we learn other things that are equally important that can really, for the most part, only be learned through experiences, occurrences, that childlike personality that's just seeking fun and pleasure is not going to resonate with. I feel like the wisdom starts to come forth, or let me back up for a second. You know, one of the questions that gets asked a lot, I've asked it, I hear it a lot, is, well, why is there pain? And I'm not talking only about physical pain, but emotional pain, suffering, the Buddhist word, suffering. Why does there have to be suffering? Why does there have to be pain? And, you know, what I see increasingly is, in the long run, pain is a very effective mechanism to learn, to experience. If I'm caught in a rut, so to speak, where maybe I started doing something that was great and wonderful and all this, and it was wonderful, and I get caught in it. And it's been going on for a long time. And it's really time for me to release it because I'm not learning anything. I'm not learning much anymore from it. So we repeat and we repeat and we repeat because we feel safe and secure, because we're doing things that we know how to do, are competent at, that used to bring great pleasure. But you get to the point of doing the same thing over and over and over, and it's not so much great pleasure anymore. The you know, the veneer wears off, and it stops being inspiring and it starts being more rote. And to me, more and more I see these are signs, not that something is necessarily over, but that something is winding down. And we're uncomfortable in it. We like to feel, until we realize that you can't, we like to have the illusion that I'm in control of whatever piece of my life I have control over. Why? Because the sense of having control removes risk and uncertainty, which at the deepest subconscious level equates to the possibility of dying. And plus it's unknown. And so in that, it's scary. And there's something built into our biological survival instinct that things that have the potential to end the form of life as we know it, there's a revulsion that's built in the body against those experiences. We can learn to overcome it. You know, you can do it with brute force and strength. You can, military training or whatever. You can do it through meditation. You can do it through contemplation. But it doesn't make that feeling of dread or fear go away. But I can change my I can learn to change my relationship to that feeling, so that it's not this horrible thing that when it shows up in the space, I want to push it away and or run away from it. It's just a piece of life. It's built in. And I also don't need it to control me. This has been a thing for me. I was had great fear as a child, And I didn't like to do things that triggered that fear, that brought it up, because I couldn't stand the way it felt. It made me feel terrible about myself. So I can't say I have totally reversed all that, but I have developed a different relationship with the feeling, the emotion called fear. And this is what I'm talking about with getting rid of what we feel. I've developed a different relationship with the emotion, I guess I would call depression, or sadness, milder form of depression, grief, anger. I can have relationship with these things. I find that they're not bad things. Fear and anger, in a way, are the body itself trying to protect itself. Anger is for us to rise up and I don't know, the example that comes to mind is the classic one of the mother picking up the back of a car because her kid got under the tire. A 103-pound mother picks up the back of a car. I mean, that can happen, but it does. And that's a more extreme case, but that's what I'm talking about. Anger causes us to rise to the occasion. Now, if I don't have a healthy relationship with my anger and I'm stuffing it, and I've stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it, I might be an angry person because I've not been expressing it. I've not been using it. And so there's some sort of healing and cleaning out process that needs to occur there. I mean, frankly, that's probably was what I was speaking about earlier. It's probably on my leading edge right now, me personally. How to, I used to spew it out on people. I found that was not very effective at all. So then I learned more how to stuff it, thinking, well, at least I'm not. But then when I get around people that are emotionally sensitive, they know I'm angry, even though if I'm not acting angry. So I'm not really fooling anyone. So what do I do with these emotions? What do I do with these feelings? I think the first thing is to get them out of the realm of being labeled. And here I'm talking about getting rid of what we feel, meaning the more what we would call unpleasant emotions. I mean, most of us don't have too much trouble feeling, if I feel happy, embracing happiness, joy, emotions, love. Those are easier to embrace. They feel better and they're more acceptable. But the thing that I find out is that life is this spectrum. What I'm on at this point is life, by our human way of looking at things and what we think we want and what we've been taught to go after, life is very messy. One of my favorite examples, I've probably talked about it before, one of my favorite examples is the old growth forest. So when I was younger and hadn't been in an old growth forest, I'm like, oh my God, this is pristine forest with trees, that are 12 feet wide, and everything's beautiful and untouched by human hands. And you get there and it's really messy. There's dead trees that have fallen. There's new trees that are trying to grow up too close to each other. There's some of the dead stuff falls on the young stuff, and it's kind of all over the place. But life is pulsating, moving through that. And it's why I say it's messy. I'm very Libran astrologically, I don't like conflict. But more and more I realize conflict is inherent in life. And not only that, conflict, not extreme conflict, from what I'm about to say, but genuine conflict, disagreement in perspectives, is actually where growth comes from, because I'm exposed to perspectives that are not mine, and I can begin to experience from that, how did someone come to this place? Now, I'm not talking about the extreme polarization perspectives that we have right now. But I'm talking about more, you know, interrelationship in between parents and children. There's different ways of looking at things. It'd be nice if everybody got along and agreed with everything, but they don't. And in a way, it's out of this conflict that we actually get stretched, that I get stretched. And that's very similar to what I was talking about with the so-called unpleasant experiences, because I get stretched by these experiences. The stretching and growing is synonymous with evolution, evolving. That's how we evolve. I think on this, some stuff happens, and I discover, whoa, I'm actually more than that. I may fight tooth and nail for a while. It's like, you know, I don't want to know that. I don't want to be that. I think I'm happy the way that I am, you know, and it's their fault that they're this and that. And, you know, what's wrong with the way I am? But this stretching is inherent. In a way, I guess, even my old growth forest example, when a tree falls on another tree, that's like a blow to that smaller tree, and it's going to grow up. It's going to have an effect on it. It's not going to grow up. It might grow up bent. It might lose some branches. It's not going to be the same tree it would be if it had grown unimpeded in what we might call perfect growing conditions. And this is true for we humans also. You know, so many of us had very difficult, painful experiences in our childhood and younger years. So I'm not the same person that I would have been if these experiences had not occurred. And in fact, a lot of my effectiveness at speaking, at being able to assist other people through difficult, or support other people, emotionally support other people through difficult and trying circumstances, comes from what I've learned from some experiences I have been through. I wouldn't be able to do that if I hadn't gone through those experiences, because I have firsthand experience what it feels like. So what if some of the things that occur to us earlier in life are not bad karma, but actually part of our plan? What if it's like a form of education or schooling? Not academic in nature, very real and emotionally often difficult, but, you know, cutting to the core. People who were abused as children, who grew up to become warriors of whether starting organizations or educating or simply working with kids, that they don't have this, have to go through these experiences that they had to go through. Without those experiences, they would not be the same. So the gist of this is, to me, allowing the conditioned beliefs of our culture that everything is supposed to be just so, or it's possible to have for everything to be just so, uh, much or most of the time. It isn't. It isn't. It's very interesting when you read about, or when I read about people with so-called charmed lives. You know, our celebrities, our moneyed people, our uh, people who have been, quote, successful in all this. You would think that they would be quite happy with what they have accomplished and achieved. And basically, they have the same, if not more, problems and issues as the rest of us have. Because what if that's what we're here? What if that is what we're actually here to work with? Not even so much, I see more and more, not even so much to resolve, but to work with. You know, I heard a while ago, I heard talking about who spent, you know, he was a PhD psychologist and obviously went to India, had a guru, had all this spiritual awareness and, you know, on and on and on. It was his whole life, fame as a teacher. And he was like, you know, in the last years of his life, he said, you know, I still have all the neuroses I ever had. I just have a different relationship with them, something along that line. And more, I see that's what it is. Our healing, our work, our loving, our caring, and all this is not necessarily going to make all these wounds go away. We can learn to dance with them better. We can learn what they need, these hurt and wounded parts in ourselves, what they need. I think I'm finding it really important of forming relationship with the wounded child places in myself. I would say we actually have more like wounded children because they're of different ages. But that's what happens, you know, with my anger. I mean, my wounded child is very angry about lots of things. And he got judged and ridiculed. And sometimes he comes up now and I can't tell the difference between, sometimes he takes me over, let's put it that way. They have a term for that, or some have a term for that. They call it getting hijacked. And we can relate it to the parts of the brain and the reptilian brain, the survival instinct and all that, and it is that. But it basically, the root of it, where it's coming from, are the unhealed, unresolved wounds of ourselves as children, where we did not get what we need. They repress them, and they're still angry. And the gist of this is that's not a bad, terrible thing. These are parts that take over because they're afraid and they're scared and they've learned survival mechanisms to make it to the age that we are, but they're still alive as children. And so it's like learning how to develop a relationship with those parts, letting them know you want to give them, I want to give them, I want to know what they need, what they want, that they didn't get, because I want to give them that. Because they didn't feel safe, they didn't feel supported, they didn't feel heard, they didn't feel respected, they didn't feel understood. You can name your own things that are important to you, that you feel in deep ways. That's what these are. These are the remnants. And I think the intent over time is to have enough of a relationship with these parts to be able to recognize when they're arising. We call it getting triggered. It's when the adult self, the normal, rational adult self that I identify myself, that's me, takes the back seat. And this unruly part of self, shockingly, starts driving the car. I don't have all the answers for this because, I mean, I've worked with this on a number of levels. And I guess what's happening for me is because I have worked on it for a number of levels, even deeper levels are arising. So I'm a work in process in this regard. And that's okay. I can't, that's all I can do. I can't do any more than I can do. I don't have to like that. I can learn to accept it. I wish, there are parts of me that wish that I could make that all go away and be faster about it. But it's going to take however long it's going to take. And I will add, the root of a whole lot of that stuff is trauma. Traumas that we're going into. So in EA, trauma is Aquarian, Uranus, 11th house. We're moving into Pluto in Aquarius, and we're moving into, on some level, an Aquarian age. So trauma is going to be rising. It's going to be, we're becoming more aware of it and its effects, its long-lasting effects. And we're hopefully becoming trauma aware and trauma educated collectively, which we have not at all been. You can call it PTSD, but it goes beyond that. And that's what these parts are that arise. So the question when they arise is part, little Stevie, in my case, what do you need right now? What are you upset about? What's bothering you? What do you need? What are you afraid of? Developing this dialogue with these parts. It's painful at times. It's scary to me to see how much they can take me over. I can become almost like a different person when deeply triggered. Triggered means something is triggering the part of a brain, the memory, the trauma associated with past events. And what tends to happen is because we have all had various very traumatic events in our life and in our soul journey down through time. And we tend to, a trauma that is about something much larger than what's actually happening in this moment. My brain, my emotions, my nervous system can associate that large size trauma with something much smaller. And so I'm then overreacting. So one of the issues, one of the learnings is to learn recognizing when I'm being triggered. A lot of the time, I don't know. I find in my case, I tend to even be in denial. I'm not being triggered. I'm fine. I'm right here. But I feel the emotions stirring within because I have shame about getting triggered. Because if you really had it together, you wouldn't get triggered. That's the belief. That's the teaching. That's not true. So again, this is what I'm talking about with getting real with what we feel. It is okay for us that we have these parts, these places. It's okay that they take us over at times. In fact, it's impossible in general for that not to occur at times. I believe that as we get more familiar with those parts and learn how to work with them and dance with them truly, instead of pushing them away or aside or shaming and judging them, go away, you unspiritual doubt or anger or whatever, that we can learn to moderate their effects and keep the adult in the room present, the adult within myself. I don't do a great job of that at this point. I'm getting a little better at it as time goes along. I don't think that that uncommon in that regard. I'm seeing more and more wonderful programs and seminars about trauma from some really awesome experts, which I think is a really good sign. But we're not in a trauma-educated reality. And so we kind of have to self-educate. What an amazing thing it would be if parents, young parents became trauma aware and raised their little kids with trauma awareness instead of to recognize when a child is triggered, scared, or whatever. And instead of shaming or judging them, sending them to their room, ignoring them when what they really want is to be picked up and held in their tears or their anger, we would be grooming a whole other generations of a whole other kind of adult. I believe this is coming, and that we're working towards this, and that the work that we, the older people now that are conscious and aware of and becoming conscious aware of the kind of stuff I'm talking about, are helping to set a foundation that will be expanded on in the generations to come. I think there's so much change going on. I think it's very likely we're going to see a lot of ugly stuff for a while, painful. I'm kind of, I wouldn't say bracing myself, but I don't want to be tuned into the very heart of hearing about that stuff all day long, every day, because I don't feel that I don't feel that's that productive, because that's only one side of the picture of what's happening. I feel like we're in an intense time, and I feel that I get clearer and clearer. The little bit, or what feels like a little bit, that any of us can do by working with ourselves and trying to feel sane at times and at moments when I don't necessarily feel sane, or what's going on around me doesn't feel sane, really is a contribution to the whole planet. Because it's going to be millions and millions of people coming to that conclusion that the best thing I can do for humanity, the world, is learn how to keep myself as reasonably sane as I can, which has nothing to do with repressing emotions and things that are coming up that don't seem sane. In fact, it's kind of like, that's the way I felt today. I don't allow myself to feel crazy. So I literally was feeling crazy, and I was allowing myself to feel crazy. I'm going to give, I'll give an example of something that happened for me over the years. So I had periods in my life I called like, I guess they would be called depression. They're just black moments or black times. And I had this for, many years, and not a lot, but I mean, periodically I would get into that kind of state. I didn't really know how to deal with it. It was it freaked me out. And I don't know, some years ago, I started, and my experience was that I might be in that state for a week, a month, whatever, and then one day out of the blue, it just went away. It passed. I didn't know why or how, it just went. So some years ago, I felt myself going into that kind of state a long time. And I was sitting at my desk and, just feeling, I don't know, it's like, it's this combination of hopeless, pointless, dark. And I was like, what if just every time I've ever been in this state, it inevitably eventually passes. So it's not like it's totally real. It feels real. It's not like it's totally real. It's not totally unreal either. It's just a temporary state. I guess I could describe it now like the sun going behind a series of clouds, and then in an hour or two, the sun comes out again. The sun didn't really go away, you just didn't see it. So I sat there going, what if I don't resist this? What if there's a lesson here for me, or a learning here for me? And just allowing myself to go into this black pool, and instead of trying to save my life, let myself drown. What would happen? What would happen? What if I just let myself sink into it? And I did. And it was scary. I embraced, felt very, very dark. I embraced it. And about 3 hours later, because I just sat in it, about 3 hours later, my mood just shifted. And I sat there going, nothing has changed. I'm sitting in the same room, the same reality, the same everything, but I feel really different about it than I just did for a few hours. So look at that, Steve, look at that. Because it means everything passes. Everything passes. Life is ephemeral. We're in this stuff, things end. Depression, and sometimes for some people in some ways, is because things are ending and they don't know how to deal with it. They don't have the skills or the experience to know how to deal with it. And so it's scary. Oh my God, what's going to happen to me? A job is ending, a relationship is ending, someone died, intense stuff. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to me? We don't know. That's the thing, we don't know. So there's a piece there about learning to embrace not knowing, learning to embrace the unknown. And in terms of trusting life, learning to trust life, learning to actually believe from experience that when things happen, something good tends to come out of them in the long run. I didn't believe that. I only came to start believing that because I saw it happen. I had, in the 90s, I had Pluto over my ascendant. my life blew up like a EA textbook, which I knew nothing about EA at the time. And, you know, my structure in my life just over a few years. And about 5 years, and it was really difficult, really, I mean, it was unbearable at times. And about 5 years later, one day I sat there going, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I'm actually grateful for all those experiences that occurred because of who I have become. And I realized I wouldn't have become who I've become, which I really like who I've become, if I hadn't had those experiences. And that part of me was gratitude. And another part of me was, shut your mouth, what are you saying? And I think both of those are true for we humans, because we're living on the human level and the soul level at the same time. And it's kind of an art, and we don't really know how to do it. We can learn how to do it. And that's what I feel we're doing, learning to embrace being a human while also being aware of this deeper sense of me that is the soul. And that's what I think all of this messiness is about. And it's not really, I don't think that many people understand this so far. And so there's a lot of people where their humanness, you know, when the human is running the show, so to speak, we want it all to be certain ways, and we want it to work. And when it goes the way I want, then that's good. And when it doesn't go the way I want, then that's bad, and so forth. So I got to take more courses to become a better manifester so I can have the reality that I think I want. What if that isn't the reality that is needed by the soul? It's not going to happen. That's where depression can come in. Oh my God, I'm such a terrible manifester. I've tried so hard. What's wrong with me? Well, it was never your personality that wants to manifest this, that, and the other thing. And I'm not saying that we should never go for something or other that we feel drawn to. I'm saying more, if you really, really, really try and it really, really, really doesn't happen, it may not be that you're a bad manifester. It may be that if that had happened, that wouldn't really be serving your soul's purpose. So it's not going to happen. Because in the end, the soul has a greater say in what occurs. Because the soul is what put us here for its own purpose of learning and growth. So I'm going to stop there. This has been Getting Real with What We Feel. And I hope that you have picked up something of value for those of you who have listened to this talk. If there are any questions, we can do that. And if not,
Well, I have a couple of comments. One, thank you, first of all. But also, as you spoke, you spoke about a number of things that, like the wounded child, and that which brought visions of Chiron, and the wounded child taking over the wheel, which is something that I've heard Tom Jacobs talk about in relation to Chiron. The other thing is, are you familiar with the book, The Language of Emotions?
I don't know that one offhand.
It's by Carla McLaren, and it is really, it speaks a lot to what you were talking about with allowing emotions, identifying them and letting them wash through us, because when they get stuck is when we have a problem, then they get jammed up.
Yeah. Yes. I would say we repress emotion that's the typical thing that occurs. I feel like that is the cause of a lot of illness that is around, because these things are just stuff. The natural flow is not allowed. We're trained to do that. And so we're holding all of this in the body. And that's what you just said, because the natural flow is to let it out so that it can flow through. So it's continually moving. So when we're cracking it down because of beliefs, which is why do we repress? We have beliefs of what I should and shouldn't feel and what I should and shouldn't do. So that stops the flow. The energy there is stuck.
And all the conditioning that you talked about too.
Exactly. That's the conditioning is why we repress, because we're literally taught that, good people don't say this or feel that, or what, whatever, or, good children, whatnot. So yeah, this is the unconditioning. And the thing is, I didn't talk about it tonight, but I am, and I feel a whole lot of people are, we tend to be sitting on vast pools of guilt and shame. I could talk about this another time, but one of the reasons that I feel emotion is repressed is because underneath that, we're feeling really crappy. I'll say it this way, there are places where we are feeling really crappy about ourselves. And we can't bear to feel that. I experience shame as the most difficult emotion for me to feel. And I feel like it's not only an emotion, it's literally physical. I mean, it literally can cause physical pain in me when I allow myself to let that emotion rise. I have been developing my relationship with my shame, that it's okay. It's not some horrible thing. You get to the point of having shame about having shame. That's like where we really get stuck. And so it's like unfolding that part through allowing it to be okay. It is okay to feel shame. It is okay to feel shame about shame. It is okay to feel anger. It is okay to feel like I'm the most selfish person that ever lived. Whatever kind of feelings that we have been taught, stay as far away from this as you can. But in truth, the releasing of it is making friends with them. And that's a process. And here's the other piece. I didn't talk about this, but I also want to give credit here because my partner could have written that book he just held up. So I get to live with a very astute emotional empath, which is not what I have been. So it has been quite an education, both for me and for her. But now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yes. So one of the things that I have learned is we cannot rush these processes, because when we rush them, we re-traumatize. There is a natural pace of the ability to hold, encompass, embrace. And sometimes it's a whole lot slower than we might like. We live in this to-do list culture of having to do 87 things in 3 hours. And it just doesn't work like that, because we're talking about these ones are held in these very wounded children, or many of them are held in these very wounded children. And they're only, the phrase is, move at the speed that the slowest part of you feels safe. Now we have, what I call our Aries parts that want it all done in 15 minutes. But we have other parts that are very tender, hurt little kids. And they cannot do it at that pace because there's a whole lot of trauma and grief that needs to be embraced. And so maybe we're not going to get to the finish line of this lifetime, so to speak, soul-wise, in the place I might think I want to. I'm only going to be able to do what I'm literally, truly going to be able to do. And it's okay. It's okay. I don't believe anymore about, he didn't fulfill his life mission kind of. I think that it takes us as long as it's going to take us. And if it takes 17 lives to do something, so be it. I feel the way about the skip steps and all this stuff. I don't really see this as a punitive thing like the person was too lazy or dense or selfish to. I think we have some concepts or learnings that we're trying to learn that are so vast relative to the human experience that it literally can take lifetimes. Because I look at it like, I like to give this example of, a fly. Like, we've all had a fly stuck in our house for about a week, and it's buzzing around for a week, and then eventually it must probably dies because it's not there anymore. So the way I look at it is, in 1 week, that fly has gotten born, it's become a teenager, it's gotten educated, it's had a career, it got married, it has kids, it gets old, and it dies. It's doing that whole thing in 1 week. It's not having those experiences, obviously, but the whole range of being a fly is going on in a week. So the whole range of being a human being is going on in a lifetime. And a soul is around for, they say, infinite. What does that mean? How many years is infinite? And so we're trying to, learn about our souls and integrate our souls into being a human and a soul at the same time. I mean, that literally could take many, many lifetimes. Now, the first response many of us have to that is, oh my God, I can't, I don't want to be here. I can't stand this, My comment I came up with about all that is, you got to be somewhere. We're infinite. You got to be somewhere. So for what is a very, very short period of time to a soul, like how long is a lifetime to a soul? I mean, 10 minutes, maybe, in a soul life. Although it's, ours 70, 90 years, whatever. It's like, it seems forever in one way. But to a soul, it's like, well, I've already done that 503 times. What's the big deal? Anyway, that's what we're working with. So the gist of it is, I'm going to do what I'm able to do, and getting to the so-called finish line faster than somebody else is not really the point or an accomplishment. Maybe it takes a whole lifetime to get just a few deep, I'm not saying this is true, I'm saying maybe getting a few really deep insights in a whole lifetime out of all the experiences that occurred. Maybe that was the point. I don't think it's that simplistic, but I think in terms of, the deeper and deeper awakenings, the gist of it is, I don't think we're screwing up. Putting it in a nutshell, I don't think we're screwing up. And I certainly have felt I was screwing up, and I still have lots of places that feel I'm screwing up. I'm not taking advantage of every, blah, blah, blah. But it's messy, and I'm doing the best I can with it. And the instruction manuals that came were not all that clearly written, right?
Right.
And so I'm doing the best with it that I can. And I want to share and help anybody else that can find benefit from it, just like you do. We have this desire when we start to, like, this isn't easy. Being a human being is not easy. And it's okay to accept that. It's an art. It pushes us to our limits and beyond. And I just see more and more, that's the point. That's the point. Because we wouldn't do this stuff otherwise. That's why we come here. And it's okay. We've learned to judge ourselves and feel bad about ourselves because of seeing how clueless and pointless and stupid and, blind I am at times. And so I judge myself as bad or wrong or dumb or whatever. But like I said, the manual is not very clear. And so in a way, we're helping to rewrite the manual. And we're stumbling through it, areas experientially.
Exactly.
Whoop, that didn't work. Okay. Now I know not to do that because I tried it and it didn't work, but I wouldn't know that if I hadn't tried it.
Great wisdom, Steve. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Does anybody else have a comment, question, or is it time to wrap it up?
Works for me.
Okay, well, I look forward to the next time we see you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Bye.